Welcome to my series of portraits of hell. This, like the other sculpts I've done in the series, starts with just a sphere, very basic. At this point, I really don't know where I'm going with the sculpt. I'm just exploring shapes. I at least know I want to do a demon, but for now I'm just scratching around the surface, trying to find some forms, laying down some basic landmarks. I just placed the mouth. I placed kind of an indication of where the eyes would go, and I'm just trying to find some interesting shapes. Here is when I just get the eyes, the extra set of eyes is where I start to feel the character a little bit more. It's very rough at this point, but when I add that extra set of eyes is when I know, okay, I'm gonna do a demon that is kind of like a watcher, right? Something that is looking at people, looking at things. That might be its role. I start to develop this idea a little bit more as I go. Here I just continue working with the move, the crease, and the clay brushes just to keep fleshing out the forms. I decided to put a little smile on him since he's a watcher. It makes sense that he would be enjoying what he's watching in this kind of twisted, voyeuristic kind of way. Here I decided to start adding some horns to it because even though he's a passive watcher, I wanted him to have this imposing form. To create the horns, I used the tubes tool here in Nomad Sculpt. I think it's one of my favorite tools in the software, to be honest, compared to the tools in ZBrush to do the same sort of thing, which you can, and they're simple enough to use. This one is just better. It just feels a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward to just control it and get the shapes exactly how you want them. After completing the base shape of the horns, I go back to the face to start adding some finer detail in there. I refine the cheekbones, I will be adding the nostrils, and I will be going up in resolution a little bit for the first time by remeshing the face, just to keep adding more of those secondary shapes to give more character and have that personality of this character come through. As we continue adding detail here, I thought I'd give you a little bit of the lore that I came up with this guy. I named him Oculovoro, the Archivist of Sin. He basically, as I mentioned, he was a watcher, but his main purpose is to watch the sinners, and he feeds off these evil actions that humans do. Obviously humans that will be condemned to hell. So he just silently watches with his grin as a looming presence in the background when these horrible acts are being committed, and he just feeds off that. That is gonna be his role on this kind of pantheon of demons that I'm making in the series. And my idea, even though I always start my sculpts kind of exploring shapes and just figuring out what comes out of it, is to have kind of a role for each of the demons that I create. I just want to, at the end, look back and have a bunch of demons, each with a specific place in hell. After working a little bit on the head, I decided that now it's kind of time to make this an actual bust. So I pull out a sphere and pull the neck, start pushing it around with the move tool to get kind of like the overall shape I want. After that, I will start to define landmarks, define the collarbone, define kind of like where the pecs meet the shoulders, and then go back to the shoulder blades and define the rest of the landmarks of the neck. I know the focus that I want for this character is gonna be the face, so I'm not really gonna focus too much on this part of the body, but it needs to be there so it's just not weird floating head, right? So I just start jumping around trying to connect the head and the neck a little bit better. I carve a hole there so I can get the neck to go up there and make it seem a little bit more seamless at the end. Here I decide to start with the ears. This is something that I usually leave out in a lot of my creature sculpts, but for this one it felt like it needed them. If he's witnessing things, obviously the eyes are kind of like the main feature, but if he's gonna be kind of like the watcher of sin, the archivist of all sinners, I guess listening to what's happening is also important. The ears, to be honest, I didn't spend too much time with. In the video, I actually lost that part of the recording, so they just pop out into existence. But to be honest, it was just like a very rough sculpting pass on those ears, and I don't think I even touched them again. In this series, this is done on my Samsung tablet, not even on a PC, because Nomad is a mobile app, I guess. Excited for that PC release that is coming hopefully soon. But yeah, this is mostly sketches that I do in my free time. I go out to cafes and stuff like that to work on these guys and just have a little bit of fun. So I don't worry too much about making everything perfect. It's just an excuse to practice sculpting. One thing that you'll see throughout the video is that I keep moving around and revisiting parts that I've already touched on just to see them from other sides and try to get those shapes right from very different angles. Obviously for the watching experience is not great because sometimes I put the model in weird places, but it's important for me to kind of assess how the model looks from different angles. Here I think I already remeshed the character again. So I'm going with the crease tool to get some wrinkles and some extra detail in. I kind of fused those eyelids that were a separate mesh before into the main head mesh just to make it a little bit more seamless. Since this model is just for fun, I'm not worried about topology or worried about making something clean, so I just keep remeshing to get the right amount of resolution that I need for what I'm doing at the moment and just keep at it. Here is just a rough pass of that torso. I think this is gonna be kind of like the last pass I do on that. Very rough pass to the horns as well. They're kind of, even though they're big, and maybe I should have spent more time on them, they're just gonna have a very simple pass with a flattened brush just to get this kind of faceted look on them. But since my focus is gonna be the face, so it's just super quick going all over them and just getting that faceted look so they look like this bony thing instead of this soft kind of tentacle. So here I get this torus to make the pupil of the eye. Since this demon is supposed to be a watcher, I want to get a little bit more detail in the eyes, I usually just get a sphere and paint it black, since that fits demons a lot. But for this one, I felt, hey, why don't we just go ahead and try to make a better eye? So the process here is very simple. The idea is just to get that torus for the pupil, to make this 3D eyes that actually look good. Then on the actual eyeball, I made a little hole, so there's depth there. And then I'll duplicate the sphere and just have the cornea come out as well. So it has the reflections on top of this 3D pupil that's gonna be inside the eye. And right after completing those steps, the idea is just to change the materials on the pupil, the eyeball, and the actual kind of outer shell that's gonna represent the cornea, just to be able to see the result a little bit better in viewport before I start to fill with render settings. Here I'm going to get an alpha to get a little bit of texture on that pupil. It's very rough and very fast. Again, this characters are supposed to be quick sketches that I completed in one day. They take me a fair amount of time, but they're usually done in a day. Maybe I go on the next day to just tweak post-processing and stuff like that, or the lighting, but the sculpt itself is usually done in just one day. Now I turn post-processing. That's why we can see a little bit more of the cavities of the character. Probably just added AO. And right now I'm struggling to duplicate the eyes that I have. I created that eye, but since I had bad organization and I usually struggle with the mirroring, taking things out of the mirroring modifier and stuff like that, I just ended up just deleting everything, getting just that one eye, duplicating it, putting it in place, and then mirroring again, just to stop messing with the modifiers and all that. In terms of what I'm doing right now is just laying kind of like the base colors. I changed the material in Nomad to a little bit of subsurface scattering to make it feel a little bit more fleshy. It doesn't look great at this time, but at the end, after I tweak a little bit of the lighting and the post-processing, it looks a little bit better. While I'm laying this basic base colors, I thought it'd be a good idea to ask you to subscribe and like if you made it this far. That'd be awesome. I'd appreciate it. Here I start to create some layers to do some tone variation to the face. I'll put an image on the side of the screen at this point to show you what I mean is the color map of the face. I've seen a lot of examples of how this works and in terms of where blood vessels concentrate in the face, stuff like that. So I follow that a little bit and then I just knock it down a lot, but that brings good variation to the tones instead of being this kind of dead color and brings life to the character. Obviously, it looks very much like a clown at the beginning. It looks weird, but after I tweak the opacity of those layers, it starts to blend in and look a little bit better. here I'm trying to decide what color to do for the lips. I ended up going with this reddish brown. I think it accentuates that smile a little bit more, makes it a little bit more creepy. And now I'm just gonna go through some of the alphas that I got to just start detailing it a little bit more. Trying to look for something that's gonna give me some good wrinkles. At the end I decide with this scratchy kind of surface that follows my brush. Very similar to one of the alphas that it's in ZBrush. I'm used to use that one a lot, so this one just came naturally for this section. And I think it worked reasonably well. Obviously, this is not a hyper-realistic set of wrinkles. It's just to give this guy texture, give it some breakup in the skin, and bring a little bit more detail and fidelity to it. But nothing that is hyper-realistic and it's gonna be like actual wrinkles that follow exactly how they should look. I'm just following contours of the volumes that I've already outlined. For the torso itself, I go even rougher. Just, again, face is the main focus of this. So for the rest, I'm just outlining a bunch of alphas, one on top of the other, in a very rough manner, just to keep kind of like that level of high frequency detail sort of consistent throughout the whole character. But I'm paying a lot less attention than I did with the face to the torso, to be honest. Here I'm trying to add those pores to kind of like the jawline area. At the beginning it was just inflating. It's just a matter of tweaking the settings so it can be laid down and look right. I decided to go over with a little bit of a darker brush just to emphasize some of the features. Since he's a watcher, having those kind of like dark around the eyes is gonna make it feel like he's not sleeping that much, he's staying up watching people. And also going around some of the other features, just giving them that outline to emphasize them helps a lot. Now I'm playing with the lighting just to get that final render for this guy. At this point, I think I'm done with the sculpture. Usually if it was a sculpture kind of like for production or something like that, I would take a lot more time, and in a lot of the steps that you saw would have taken more time to work on it. But since the whole idea of this is for me to just practice sculpting in my free time, I just leave it at the point where I'm sort of satisfied with how it looks, and then I just start playing with the lighting and the post-processing in Nomad, which is really awesome. It lets you get really nice renders out of a mobile app, which to me is still mind-blowing, right? Here I realized I forgot to give the horns maybe a little bit more love. Again, very rough pass with the texture on top of the horns. With hindsight, I think that looks pretty bad, but at the moment it seemed like a good idea, so I just went for it. Again, I think it was more a decision to maintain kind of like that level of high frequency detail consistent throughout the model, not leave areas untouched. And these are kind of like the final renders. Hope you enjoyed.